I joined Cognizant about 8 months ago, last September. And of course, I don't think I need to explain what Cognizant is doing. In the first quarter of this year, we delivered over 5 million learning hours. So just to give you an idea of the engine of learning that we're doing for our 280,000 employees. Now, on top of that, there's two concepts that are really important for me, and they were already introduced in the panel. One is curiosity and one is sharing culture. Curiosity for me has three dimensions. First of all, curiosity about the world. Am I curious about my industry, my technologies I'm touching, the things that I'm doing every day, things that are outside of me? Because at the end of the day, I'm telling people very often, you don't need me. You don't need learning. If everybody's curious, I can go and spend a good time on Goa or some other beach because people just get on with it, you know? Now, the challenge is not everybody is just getting on with it, and we need to support many people. Now, the second dimension of curiosity is curiosity about the other. Am I really capable of trusting the other people in my office, in my environment, to look them into the eye and say, can you help me to create the better version of myself? Can we have this positive dialogue together so we can help each other to move up in a better dimension? And the third dimension, I think the most difficult curiosity part, is curiosity about myself. Do I know my strengths or my weaknesses? Do I know my limiting beliefs? Do I know whether I have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Do I know whether I'm a dependent or an independent learner? Do I know whether I have a locus control which is far from me or close to me? Those type of things, curiosity about myself. And next to that is sharing culture. I have 280,000 associates in the company, and that means for me, everybody is a trainer. Everybody has some great things to share with at least one other person, and probably many more than one other person. And how do I create, not courses, but an environment where people just share? A coach of a minute, a mentor of a second, some environment where people can really share their knowledge with each other. And that's my challenge. This is a little bit the story I'm going to talk about. I think learning is who is here working in learning? Everybody? No, not everybody. I'd like to give an applause to all of us for all the good work. For all the good work that we're doing every day in trying to upskill the people that we have around us. And hopefully also upskill ourselves a little bit. And I think there we have a little bit of a challenge. There's no entry requirement to get into the L&D space. There's a lot of diversity that's flowing into the system. Now the challenge is a lot of us are just winging it because we don't have the theoretical basis on which to base good versus bad. We have all kind of mental models in our mind, but we don't realize. We cannot give words to those. And when we're interfacing with our business partners, they have an opinion. The problem with learning, everybody has an opinion because we all went to university and we all have this ideal version of how some good learning should look like. Now, we as learning professionals, I found in all the companies I've been with, we don't have enough language to counter that balance and telling business, this is your need, this is your pain, great. Now, I'm a professional in this space. Let me figure out the how. And that's a journey that I'm working on with my teams. I'm often, and this is part of this language. If you don't know these terms, I'd probably say, look for another job or start writing your CV. I think if you're not curious about your own drivers or your own why you were doing things, like behaviorism, that's something that started already way back, but you could say roughly around the Industrial Revolution, that's something that was picked up, where the notion was we have to train citizens into really basic skills, calculus and basic reading, because that was needed at that time. And in those days, the trick was all about let's find a model, and basically the Catholic schools were the model since the 7th century, where young kids were trained up in the gospel, basically. And basically the trainer was the parent and the kids were the children who were not supposed to question anything, who were supposed to just absorb everything that the trainer wanted, and that was the model of education. Now translate that in 2019, what our kids are going through. Still pretty much the same model, no? Kids are considered to be stupid. You're not supposed to have your own ideas. You're not even supposed to talk to your neighbor. Just listen to the teacher because the teacher has all the knowledge in it. So basically, it was behaviorism. You might also know, for the psychologists amongst us, as the stimulus response dimension. This is where it comes from. You do a class and a test. That's the model. We're assuming that you know nothing. So I can open your skull, pour in some knowledge, whether you like it or not, and you're going to improve. So very often I've heard in present companies and previous companies, let's do something. Our sales guys are not good in closing a deal. Let's train those stupid guys. You know? And let's pour them into a 2-day training program and check the box, and suddenly they should get it by now. That's not learning. Actually, that's learning the behaviorist way. And there's still a lot of good things about behaviorism. I'm just making some shortcuts here. Now, a little bit later, you had people like Vygotsky and other great thinkers that said, hold on, people are not empty spaces. People have preconceived ideas, good or bad ones. So how do we deal with that? We cannot just train all these sales guys into something. Let's figure out what their ideas of the world is or what their ideas of customers is. Let's find it out first before we get onto a journey. So basically, that's where we get the pre-tests from. We pre-test your knowledge, whether you're good or bad, and then we're trying to have a little personalized journey. That's constructivism all about. And then nowadays, we're talking miles ahead, because that's what the digital economy is needing. It's not anymore about preconceived ideas. I am a creative agent throughout my entire life. Even from the moment I'm born, I'm starting to interface with the world, and I'm a creative agent. I'm creating meaning for myself constantly. How do we as learning professionals deal with that? We spoke about curiosity. We spoke about learn to learn. It's really difficult for most of us to start doing train-to-train sessions because business does not require that from us. But that's the biggest skill we need nowadays in 2019. But it doesn't fit our current model because our current models are very much more behaviorist. So making a cognitive dimension where we're basically treating everybody like an adult, where we're creating people around awareness. What are my awareness? What is my curiosity about myself is the biggest building block that we need to go through. The challenge is our kids are not being taught this in schools because our teachers don't know. They were never taught about that. So we have, and assuming that we as adults, we are fully on top of things, is also not the case. Nobody of us, I'll tell you, including myself, we're not playing at 100% of our capabilities. There's always something holding us back. This small voice of a parent saying you're not good in math, or you're going to make it but only until there, or India's your territory, the world is not, whatever it is. So that awareness is the jumping board for making the professionals of the future. How do we deal with that in the 21st century? So my point here is, do we have the language to counter our businesses, to really say, the how, we know these things. We know, dear manager, you think in a behavioralist model. We have to design for something completely different. Now, the model that we have chosen in modern workplace learning, and you alluded to that already, is modern workplace learning. And for me, modern workplace learning is the next generation after the 70-20-10 model, and I'm sure we're all aware with the 70-20-10 model. This is a model which also incorporates knowledge management. The basic notion is, this is all about autonomy, and the other axis is about value. So basically, if courses which you see here on the left-hand side are limited in autonomy, and also in terms of value, they're also okay, but limiting to the organization. And the autonomy is limited because somebody else is deciding for me on the timing, on the content, on the flow, and everything else. Now, how many here went to a course in the last 3 months? And we're all learning folks. So I should see a lot, but actually in most audiences where I ask questions, I see very few hands going up. Because training, going to classes or going to e-learnings is not the common way for people to learn. We learn every day. You learn by coming here. You learn by talking to people. You learn many bits. Now, how many people went into Google in the last 2 days? And how many times? Just show it in your hands. Ooh, you don't know, you know. And that's how we're learning. And that's how our learners, I hate the word learners, but this is how the people in our companies learn. Continuously, because they're constantly in touch with technology. Now, that's the dimension of resources. Now, if you don't ask Google, you will ask your neighbor if you have a challenge. And that's the entire notion of social collaboration. It's not only about, it's kind of the 20%, no? It's learning from others, whether it's peers or bosses or subordinates. You mentioned reverse mentoring. That's all social collaboration. And then the fifth piece, which is really important, is how much do you learn by being here, by being on LinkedIn. Twitter and LinkedIn are my personal learning favorites. I've not gone to any courses in the last, I think, couple of years, but I'm learning so much every day. The couple of people I respect, deeply respect, I follow them, and they feed me naturally stuff. And I read like crazy. Trying to read like 5 hours a week, just constantly upskilling myself and reading and talking and listening and audiobooks and all those type of things. Personal learning is also learning under the shower. Or learning while sleeping. Now remember, for the American colleagues amongst, John Dewey, beautiful philosopher, he said learning does not happen in a class. Learning happens in the reflection after the class or after the thing you've consumed. So you could probably say it doesn't matter what people consume, whether they read a book or go to an e-learning or go to a class. The actual learning is what happens to me when I'm going to reconfigure my synapses and all the things in my brain to deepen that learning. And it can be done in practicalities, in doing things hands-on, or it can be just thinking about things. For me, very powerful thing, and our entire teams are mandatory reading Jane Hart's book, and we're having sessions around this. Now, an interesting survey we did within the company, and this is about learning preferences. How do you prefer to learn, dear associates? And this is we sliced and diced it per gender and per demographic and per region and per business. But this is pretty much what came out. This is the average picture. This is how do I want to learn? And I didn't say that, but about 65% of our population is Gen X or Gen Z. So you're talking about a young population. This is how we want to learn. And to your earlier point, it doesn't really matter. You're an Gen X or a Gen Z because we're all, look at people. I'm 51. I'm online more outside the office than in the office, going on technology. So I'm also, I guess, trying to be a Gen X or Gen Z technology-wise. I'm not a digital native. I had my first computer when I was 21. So I guess makes me a digital immigrant. And an immigrant is somebody who has an accent, like I have a Belgian accent, but also in technology I have an accent. And many of my kids, they don't have an accent, you know. Anyway, look at this. People love to learn on the job. People love to learn around knowledge sharing. Please create an environment on how we can share even more. Now, look at this list and where e-learning is number 5 and classroom training is number 8 or 9 or so. This is how people self-profess to learn. Now, this is not the full survey results yet, because we still have to go much deeper, but it points us in a certain direction on how people want to learn. And if I'm looking at the services that I'm providing with all our learning environments, then I'm asking myself a big question. Do I answer to these needs? Or am I pushing classes? Am I pushing e-learnings? Am I pushing other things? Do I have other things that I'm offering? Or do I cater for the people that are just getting on with it and don't need any support from me? Or do I cater for the people that are in the middle of the box, that need some support because they're more dependent learners type of things? Now, it's an interesting wake-up call for all of us in seeing how we, what is the service model we have to do? The challenge I'm seeing often with L&D folks, and I'm of course one of them, our businesses have moved radically forward, and we're still stuck in the 1980s. About 20 years ago, we decided to change the word training into learning altogether. Somehow it happened. You know, I don't know why, but somehow we all decided to do that. And actually, nothing changed. We still continue to deliver classes, the behaviorist way. But we're now happy that we call it learning. Now, this is an interesting also World Economic Forum was mentioned earlier. These are the skills that we need now, at least according to the World Economic Forum, and I think many of us can recognize these. Now, these are the skills already that are going to be different in 2022, the skills we need, and here are the skills we don't need. Only 4 years from now. Now, you can take it with a pinch of salt that the world is not going to grow so fast and things like that, but everybody's been talking about speed, so let's assume that this is going to be somehow true. So somehow active learning and learnability is the number 2 skill here, only 3 years from now. My question to all of us, what are we doing about this? Are we continuing happily to do leadership trainings and technology trainings and all of these things? Or are we really equipping our people to learn faster and better and more? Are we training our people all things around learning strategies? You know, there's so much new research coming out. You know that underlining or highlighting is completely flawed as a learning mechanism? We could talk about it later. We all tell our kids, and our parents have told us, you have to underline if you want to study diligently, and if you still have an empty book without any text, any fluo, then you're not a good learner. That's completely bollocks. There's research showing that it's actually going against the learning. You're learning, in terms of facts, you learn roughly the same as if you don't underline. In terms of inferences, you learn much less. And we can talk about it more, right? But there's so much research out there that we can use immediately to educate people around how to learn, which I don't think we're doing enough of. Now we have a choice as L&D, I think. Are we focusing on the past or are we focusing on the future? Focusing on the past would be, we focus on trainers and instructional design and just in case and corporate curricula and events type of things. And focus also, which is an important one, I think, the parent-child model. I know what you want because I'm your manager, I'm the L&D department, I'm HR. Who is married here? Who was ever successful in convincing their partner to change their behavior? Well, I'm not, but you see, how on earth do we think we can convince our employees to change behavior? But we have still this Taylorist view of the world, that we have this illusion of control, that we can control people, and I'm going to change you, whether you like it or not, because actually you're an empty vessel. I can open your skull and fill it up, and you will remember. Yeah, sure, are we ready?